access the podcast of OA. Located deep within Sector 14845 and powered by the Emerald Light of Will, the podcast of OA is your guide to the Green Lantern universe. Hosted by Lantern Myron Rumsey, the podcast of OA begins now.
Welcome, everyone, to episode number 134 of the podcast of OA. I'm your co-host, Myron Rumsey, and I am joined by my friend and your friend, Phil Bova. Phil, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Myron. Great to be back again. Talk about some more great stuff. Really great week for Green Lantern this week.
Absolutely. We've got the fourth issue of The Green Lantern to talk about, so that'll be kind of exciting. I'm looking forward to chatting about that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good issue this week.
Absolutely. And we've got some listener feedback to go over as well. So this may be a shorter episode, but hopefully it'll be a good, enjoyable episode for everybody.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, let's take a brief pause and let's jump right into it.
Okay, Myron, here we are back again. The Green Lantern, issue number 4, out this week. Written by the ever-powerful Grant Morrison and with the art of just the beautiful Liam Sharp.
Yeah, he's really killing it. You know, it's amazing. You know, his style is really interesting because there's something very classic about it, but it's also very modern at the same time.
Well, and I was talking to my wife about this the other day, and I was showing her some of the panels and some of the pictures of it. It's like he uses all his space. He doesn't leave it unless it's like a small panel trying to just send one message. But other than that, he fills his space with every little tiny part with the artwork, and it's really massive, and it makes it really immersive, and actually kind of gives it that three-dimensional effect.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, and he's got that level of detail, so that everything feels very organic. When you look at like the insect bugs that open the issue up, you know, it looks very almost fantasy sword and sorcery like in a way. But then when you cut to Ran and you've got this modern architecture with the Thanagarians are there, and there's some Zerdarians, and there's even a member of the Legion of Superheroes sitting there in the background. That looks very modernistic. So it's a really nice contrast in you know, I don't want to say two different styles, but his style is kind of timeless.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, he just does great work. And like I remember back to the Brave and the Bold that he wrote with the Batman Wonder Woman, and I'll tell you what, it's just the depth of his artwork back then was phenomenal, and it's nice to see him. He's developing more, and if I may be bold, and I don't know if he'd agree with it or whatnot, but it's more defined now, or it's becoming redefined.
Yeah. You know, the cover to this issue, I want to call kind of special notice to that. The big bad vampire, you know, the cosmic vampire daughter. Her name in this is I know I'm going to mispronounce it. I when I was typing the review, I had a hard time with it. It's Belzebeth.
Black Star Commander. Yeah.
Yep. She is the daughter of Starbreaker. And Starbreaker is a Justice League villain from the 1970s. And this cover is very much an ode to the cover of Justice League of America number 96, where Starbreaker made his debut. So I love the fact that Liam Sharp took, you know, homage to something very classic and again modernized it for this book, but just a nice little wink and a nod to something that people may recognize.
And not only that, and I was also I got that brought up too, because I got the cover of the Justice League of America number 96 up. Not only that, let's not forget that the Star Eaters of these beings, or the Sun Eaters, or whatever these beings are called, Hal Jordan and more importantly Parallax, actually saved planet Earth during the the final night.
Yep, the final night.
So it's nice to see that he's bringing this around, because that directly involves Hal Jordan, because he was, you know, primarily responsible for getting rid of one of the Sun Eaters and saving the planet.
Yeah, he had a bit of an easier time this time around, that's for sure. But
sure.
It was neat to see the Sun Eaters show up as well. What did you think about the whole, this whole thing with Hal kind of being the man with no name is kind of a flash over to the Clint Eastwood movies. A fistful of dollars and a few dollars more, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. That kind of a character. Seeing that show up here, were you surprised it was Hal, or did you kind of get it all along?
No, I kind of had a feeling because the way he wrote this, it was really kind of cool because it was like he was telling a story, and then it was doing the over effect of what was happening in the story he was telling. And then after a few times, I was like, well, how would he know so much about the Green Lanterns? He would have to would have been a Green Lantern to know as much as he did about them, And then more importantly, when he brought up Hal Jordan specifically. So I kind of caught on a little bit early, but remember, they said that he was going to go for this whole space cop, idea, and he's really nailing it too, because this is like pure Hal Jordan detective work and going undercover and trying to figure out what's going on. I like it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. I thought that was really kind of cool. And I love the fact that, once again, Grant Morrison uses some classic Green Lantern characters in this book as well. I mean, we still see some of the characters we saw last time around, but this time we see Taggart, which was a character that was created by Jeff Johns. And then we see Ashpack Glyph, which is from the Kyle Rayner era. Yeah.
He's bringing a lot of stuff back, and I've read a couple articles on a lot of these issues because they're all getting really, really, really good reviews still. I don't think I've read a really negative review about any of them, and a lot of it's been about him bringing back these older characters, bringing back some of the essence of Green Lantern, back in the day.
Yeah, it's really kind of neat. I in particular love the space cowboy thing, just because that's kind of how I would try to describe him to somebody who doesn't know a whole lot about comics. If I was trying to describe Hal Jordan, is I would call him a space cowboy. So I loved this whole look that they did with the forearms, but it's still very classic Western looking.
Yeah. What do you think about that spread on that one page at the end or towards the end with all the creatures on it? It's in that top panel.
Oh yeah, that was really cool.
Oh, what a great image. He's got some stuff in there.
Yeah, it's really neat. What did you think about Hyperia 3?
Hyperia 3 was cool. It kind of reminds me of like an amped up Mogo.
Yeah. I thought that was really kind of a neat idea. And it's not that far-fetched. If we already live in a universe with sentient planets, the idea of kind of an intelligent star, it's not that hard to grasp, especially when you look at Vulcan, a guy with a volcano head. So sure. Anything really is possible. And he forces us to really look at this as a space adventure with some very far-reaching, far-fetched concepts, but somehow it just works.
It really does. I mean, and like I said, I think back when we first began talking about these issues when they were coming out, the first one, we talked about, we liked it, second one, we were still kind of like getting used to it, but the storyline's really, really progressing. And while it may have started slow, it's really started to pick up. I don't know. I've kind of noticed it towards the end of issue 2, really so much in 3. And then this one really here, it just really hit top gear.
Yeah, it was neat, and I actually went back and I reread all 4 issues as I was after I wrote my review. I went back and kind of read them all back to back because I think this is a series that's actually going to read better in trade than it does in floppy format. And when you go back and you reread the previous issues, they reference the fact that in this issue, that flashback scene see where Bezelbeth goes down to the crypt and opens the vault up.
Yeah,
that's the antimatter Green Lantern that you see in the very first issue.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Exactly. Yeah, you're right. I didn't even pick up on that. Interesting.
I only picked up on it mainly in the beginning because Hal mentions it in his conversation in the bar on Ran. He talks about that being, I can't remember the exact line. He says something about what was so special about the vault. We're talking about the same mysterious cargo that came in through the gambler's world. So that kind of tied it all back again.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I didn't even think about that.
So, it all makes sense. And I really kind of like the fact that we're seeing puzzle pieces added to the puzzle as we're going along that makes a bigger picture as you keep going. I'm still trying to figure out what Controller Moo and Bezelbeth is trying to do with all these different things they're getting. You know, we see them get in that very first couple of issues, they get the Heart of the Weapon Air from this antimatter version of Hal. They get the Luck Dial, and then they steal the Star Band from Evil Star. We don't know what the other 2 items are. They said there were 5 items. I'm still trying to figure out what else they might be going for, and what's the end goal for this.
Maybe they're trying to resurrect Starbreaker.
That could be interesting if, you know, it kind of makes sense if they were trying to do something like that. They talked about having what they called, air quote, the ultimate asset. And I'm not sure what that is, but that could very well be Starbreaker.
I mean, you know, if they're bringing in his daughter, you know, she's the cosmic vampiress, you know, the Starbreaker was the cosmic vampire. So, I mean, it could possibly be. And that'll be like one of those, I don't know, it kind of feels like one of those vampire movies like Blade or something like that, where they're trying to resurrect Dracula or whatnot.
Yeah, you're right.
And it just kind of makes sense that Grant Morrison would go that kind of radical route with this whole cosmic vampires. And then you got, you know, Hal Jordan in his cowboy bebop style. I don't know, Stranger Things, right? So,
right. Anything is on the table at this point, I think.
You know, I will say this about this issue. The locations. I've noticed, like in past issues of Green Lantern, even with respect to Venditti and previous authors, the locations in here have really, they seem like they've, I don't know, it seems like the writing and the artistry has added more, how you say, resonance to the locations that they're visiting. Like you had mentioned, when you see the architecture work on Ran, right, and that one shot right there where they're sitting on the couch, it just doesn't. It seems like with that depth and that kind of quality, it adds more to the location of which they're residing in, as opposed to some of the other panels and comic books we've read before when they visit different planets and whatnot.
Yeah. Now, you know, we do see Hal addressing the whole deal with having, you know, where he killed, air quote, killed Volgar Zoe.
Right.
Do you think that Volgar Zoe really got killed, or do you think that was a trick?
Well, again, I think this is going to go back into Hal Jordan's credibility. I mean, he's never been known to kill, you know, and I don't think he's still that type of character unless he's really, really pushed the ultimate limit. And by pushed, I would think Hal Jordan would be one that'd have to be pushed so hard that it would have to be an emotional toll on him, you know, or he'd have to have some kind of a emotional bond with something if he was pushed that hard. Kind of like if you liken it to the end of Man of Steel when Superman broke Zod's neck. But Hal Jordan just doesn't kill willy-nilly, and it just didn't seem like something that he would do to begin with. And it could be one of those rope-a-dopes again, like we saw in the other issue that we think happened with Grant Morrison writing, that really maybe that person's not dead, maybe they're still alive.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering if that was done to give the general knowledge out there that Hal went bad, and that's why he's trying to join the Black Stars, and this is allowing him to go undercover.
Well, that's where I would go with. I would go with the more the undercover route, because I mean he's already grown a beard. I mean he's looking like his a amped up version of his Renegade, you know, days. And it just seems like a better story arc to go with than just him killing somebody and going rogue, joining the Black Stars or whatever the case may be. I'm not sure where that story arc would go with Hal Jordan, you know, if he were to join that kind of group.
Yeah, I really definitely feel like this is an opportunity for him to go undercover. And I go back and I look at that first issue when Hal is talking to one of the Guardians, and the Guardian says there's a traitor in our midst. And I wonder if Hal is the traitor, air quote, because he's the one that's going to look bad so that he can be, his credibility about being kicked out of the Green Lantern Corps sticks for anybody that might find out what's going on. And that gives him his background check. You know, they'll know that he got kicked out of the Corps, and here's why he's trying to get in with the Black Stars. I think it's perfect cover. Or
conversely, it could be him going undercover to find out who the traitor is.
True, that's just as likely as a possibility.
I mean, if you're gonna try to root out your mole, you'd want to send in your best person to do so. And I mean, Hal Jordan is known to be the best. So, I mean, that could be where the storyline goes too. So there we go, man. That's 2 great points coming from 2 great Green Lantern fans.
Now, we did get something else here that I thought was equally important, and that's we get references to Jon Stewart, Simon Baz, and Jessica Cruz.
Yep. Just a little. It wasn't much, just a little bubble.
Yeah,
we got.
Yeah, it was just a little shout out. But it does kind of then say that Simon Baz must be alive somewhere, even though we're not seeing him anywhere.
Yeah, and that's. I mean, do you think that's really what it is? I mean, maybe Grant Morrison doesn't know if Baz is alive or not. Maybe / hopefully, Baz is actually dead. And maybe Morrison just didn't get the update. Let's hope for that.
Send your feedback too. No.
Yeah, exactly. I should keep my mouth shut. No, hopefully he's alive. Whatever the case, if he's alive, he's alive. I know that I've been reading Odyssey, and Cruz doesn't really mention him at all in there. So I don't know. I don't know where this dude's at.
Yeah, we did talk about this last episode a little bit. Are they writing Jessica as Jessica, or are they writing her as a generic Green Lantern over there?
No, they're writing Jessica as Jessica, but she doesn't have the anxiety problems that she exhibited a lot through the Green Lanterns. You know what I mean? That I felt like during that time frame they were really, really focusing on that, and I think now since they've gotten past that, and I don't know if you get past something like that, but since they've written past Green Lanterns, I think now they're more focused on her being a member of the team.
Yeah, and to me, I don't know. I've never been a big Jessica Cruz fan in the first place, but you kind of wonder if they're gonna kind of stop talking about the anxiety issues and so on. What does that do for people that was their attraction? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's going to cause a big problem, man, because there's a lot of people that really, really attached to her just for that alone. And the funny thing about it is that's not even her first characteristic trait of which she was developed. I mean, if you really want to be frank, I mean, she had power ring. You could say she suffered from split personality disorder right off the bat, and then later on she started to become more anxious and suffered from anxiety.
Yeah, it's hard to say because the way that she was portrayed when she was first written doesn't really line up with how she was portrayed in the Green Lanterns book. No,
definitely not. And I mean, while I agree with the change and I agree with how her character has progressed, it's a little bit different than what I think what she was intended for.
Yeah.
But I hope that no matter what they do with her, I don't know. I watched the trailer for the Justice League Fatal 5. And even in that, watching some of that trailer, it didn't look like she was showing any kind of traits that had to do with suffering from anxiety. But then again, I don't know if the animated features that DC puts out reflectively go with the comic books. You know what I mean? So like Superman suffers from whatever the case may be, an eating disorder. Would they show that in an animated feature, right? I don't know if those cross lines or not.
Well, in the on the Reign of Superman movie that came out, the physical copy,
which was great. That feature was amazing.
There's a behind the scenes of the Justice League versus the Fatal 5, and they talk specifically about choosing Jessica because of her issues and trying to destigmatize mental anxieties. And Jessica plays a lead character in the movie.
Yeah, I did read that.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the listener feedback. But it looks like that was why they chose her, because she's going to be playing alongside of the other character that's in the movie, trying to help him come to terms with things, and it will kind of be a subplot of the movie.
It's interesting, and like you said, we'll talk about this when we do the listener thing. But it's interesting how she's becoming more and more popular. I mean, you got to keep in mind. I mean, she's getting her own animated feature, and we haven't even gotten that from Guy Gardner. Jon Stewart, of course, was in the animated Justice League animation, whatever. And Simon Baz, of course, I hope we never see him in one, but. It's just really interesting how Jessica Cruz is I don't know, she's gotten really, really popular. And I mean, I like it because I've always been fond of her character. I just kind of wonder if this is going to have any kind of thing to do with if they decide to do a film later on down the line.
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think that will have any bearing at all. You know, maybe if we get 3 or 4 Green Lantern movies, we might see it happen, but I don't think that's where they're going to go. But again, that's just me. You know, who knows what Jeff Johns is doing? He's writing the script now, and in what few comments he's made, he's likened it to his run on Green Lantern. So I expect it's going to be closer to a Hal and John traditional type of film.
Or like a rebirth title, maybe.
Yeah, it's hard to say what they're going to do. You know, it's all up in the air, and who knows if we're actually ever going to see any of it. Yeah,
well, that's true too. You had to say that, didn't you?
I know. I'm trying to be more pragmatic. But I think this is a great issue all the way around. You know, I'm really enjoying this book. And again, I think it holds up better when you reread it. You know, it's still a kind of a book where, you know, some of the books, even during the Robert Venditti run, were quick. You could pick it up and read it in 10, 15 minutes, and there wasn't a lot of depth to it. You know, it's still enjoyable, but just it was a quick read. And these books, I think you really have to slow down and take your time to really digest it and look for clues and subtleties that you normally don't see in a comic these days.
You know, and it's funny you mentioned that, because when I had read this, I specifically wanted to wait to read it today. I didn't have a lot of time yesterday. And I picked it up and I started reading it. And I burned through the first 3 pages really quick. And I was like, hold on. I was like, something doesn't feel right. So I went back and I started doing it. I went back and read it again, those other 3 pages. And then I got halfway through the book. And then I had to stop for whatever reason. And then when I came back to it, I was like, you know, I need to do this right. So I read it from the very beginning to the very end. And ironically enough, it reflects what you said. I mean, I really felt like this issue I had to focus on, because he's putting a lot of Easter eggs in here, you know, and he's drawn a lot of threads from a lot of these older Lantern titles. And I fear that a lot of fans out there, a lot of nuanced fans out there, aren't going to know what a lot of these threads are, which, you know, takes people like yourself, because you got a lot of vast knowledge of this, of Green Lantern, to put those points together so you can explain that to people, you know, because not a lot of people knows about the Starbreaker. I barely knew myself until I was like, you know, that cover looked familiar to me. And I was like, why does that cover look familiar to me? And I started trolling. And that's when I came across the Justice League of America title. And I was like, oh, that's right. And then I was like, oh my God, I remember Starbreaker. Just vaguely, though.
Well, you know, I have to do that. I have to go back and look at things. Like, I'll see things like Sunboy, who was in, Sunboy is in the background on Ran. And he's a Legion of the Superheroes character. And I was never really a big Legion fan. But when I was looking at the panel, I'm like, gosh, that looks like a traditional Legion of Superheroes outfit. I need to find out who this is. And sure enough, that's who it looks like, very much so. You know, stuff like that, I do have to go back and look at things. But certain things will strike a chord. Like you said, you know, you look at the cover, and it's like, you know, this looks vaguely familiar. I need to do some research into this, because, you know, it's not a throwaway.
Yeah, exactly. And the cover's great. Well, I mean, of course, look who's drawing these covers. I mean, they're just amazing. Well,
you know, just to tout Liam Sharp again, one of the things I thought was really cool is when you see Hal in space with Volk and they're dealing with the Sun Eaters. Mm-hmm. Did you notice how the cloud above Volk becomes a more perfect sphere because it's being contained by the energy bubble?
Let me see, what page are you on there? Oh, let me see.
It's later on when they're floating there and they're waiting for Hyperia 3 to show up. And you see Volk in space there, and Volk's cloud, normally like when he's walking around, it looks like this more larger cloud, but here it is, it's kind of condensed because it's wrapped in an energy bubble in space.
It's a contained volcano cloud.
Yeah. I mean, you know, stuff like that is just, you know, it's that crazy attention to detail of, well, of course that makes sense. If you can accept that there's a guy with a volcano for a head, then when he's in space, you know, it's got to go somewhere. It can't just float around. So it gets this little contained bubble.
If you look at that one where it says "Wish upon a star," Volk looks like he got a little smile on his face.
Oh yeah, it does. It looks like a little smiley face, like he's suddenly become an emoji man. But yeah, I just enjoying the heck out of this book.
Yeah. Yeah. This is going to be a good run for these guys. And they're setting a new tone to it. It's just a nuanced approach to it. And, while me being a diehard fan, I'm sure you felt the same thing when you first started reading it coming off of Venditti. You're like, you have that hesitant feeling where you're not sure if you're going to like it or you're going to take to it or not. But it's Green Lantern. You give it some time, it ends up growing on you. And
well, I think Robert Venditti's style was very complimentary to Jeff Johns, so it wasn't a shocking transition. But Grant Morrison is he's a different kind of storyteller, and his style of writing is so different. So it comes back to managing our own expectations of the book and what is it we're looking to get out of the book and what are we given. And sometimes they don't line up necessarily right off the bat, but I like you said, I think you have to give it some time to adjust to the fact that this isn't the same thing we've been getting for the last 15 years.
Yeah, that's a long time. And when you're digesting that much material from a specific writer, number one, it's just, not a specific writer, but a writer that reflects like Jeff Johns and all them. This is totally off the fringe. And Grant Morrison said it was going to be different. He said it wasn't going to be like anything that you've read before. And he's true to word. That's definitely true.
It is. I remember before the book was even announced, I was at a convention and I was talking to someone from DC Comics. I'm not going to name names. But I was having a really good conversation with this individual, and this was right after Bleeding Cool had released the rumors that they had about it. And this individual basically confirmed to me it was going to be Grant, and not in so many words, but he basically alluded to it. And, the comment was that he and I both shared was that how it will succeed or fail depends on which version of Grant Morrison we get, because sometimes Grant writes so complex and so deep that you lose the story in the details. There's so much there that it's hard to find the true meaning of the story. Mm-hmm. And that can turn people off. And the other side of the coin is he can write straight up superhero stuff, but is that really what you want from Grant Morrison? So, I think it goes back to, like I said earlier, managing our expectations and realizing this is Grant Morrison. He's going to tell stories in a different way. Let's try to enjoy the ride, because after all, it's still Green Lantern. It's still what we love, but it's being looked at through maybe a different lens. And I think that's exciting too.
Yeah, me too. And it's a good point. Grant Morrison's like that. You've read his Super Gods, right? Have you ever read that? Did I ask you that? Yeah,
I've read some of his other stuff, and sometimes, I get it and I enjoy it. There are some times where, like Multiversity, I really struggle with Multiversity.
A lot of people did. I think that was a consensus of that book.
I also struggled with Final Crisis.
Final Crisis was good. I liked Final Crisis. Multiversity was one of my faves that he's done. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that I really enjoyed that DC decided to go that route and explore and expand upon that that kind of realm with their characters.
Yeah, I enjoyed it from the adventure and that part of it. Where I struggled was to find the meat of the story.
I gotcha. Yeah, now that makes sense. And I think, like I said, that a lot of people, that was a consensus of a lot of people because it was complex. He's a complex writer.
Yeah, and you got to give him his due there. He's no slouch when it comes to that kind of stuff, and you just have to try to go for the ride, like I said. And again, I think this is going to be a book that when it comes out in trade, it's going to read better. Or if you sit down with the floppies and reread them in their entirety, when you get all 12 issues of this season, and you go back and reread it, it's going to make a lot more sense, I think, for people that are struggling.
I think I might do that. When issue 5 comes out, I'm going to do what you did, go through and read 1 through 5 and kind of take it all in and see how it feels.
Yeah, I recommend it. It takes a little bit of time, but I think it's worth it. And I think it's worth taking the time to slow down and really enjoy the experience. I think we've gotten into the habit in modern comics where the books move really fast, and this isn't that kind of a thing. This isn't a drive-through fast food. This is more of a sit-down meal. Yeah,
and this title is definitely that, just like that.
Yeah, definitely. But another great issue, and I think Liam is really killing it. And as much as we want to talk about Grant Morrison, I think Liam Sharp is equally a big part of the success of this book.
Really nice guy too. He always responds to me on Twitter and stuff. Like when I make commentaries about a lot of his books or a lot of the panels or whatnot. It's really he must be a humble guy, and he's getting a lot of accolades for his writing, which he should already have them anyway. It's not just Green Lantern that he's penciled. Brave and the Bold was fantastic, and he's got other work that's been wonderful. But it's good to see him get more credit with this.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about him being so humble. When I do my reviews for the blog of OA, I often tag him and Grant Morrison in the headline for the story when it shows up on Twitter, and he always replies and says thank you, and I'm like, really, you're thanking me? I'm just I'm not doing this because I expect anybody to thank me for it. And I'm not getting the books like some other sites do. I don't get the books from DC for free to review. I'm paying for these with my own money. I'm sharing it just out of my own love for it. I'm not a professional reviewer in any way, shape, or form. And I don't think necessarily what I have to say carries any weight with the fans in general. I'm writing it because I like it. And if people read the reviews and it helps guide them in their reading experience, that's great. That's wonderful. But, I'm humbled when he takes the time to acknowledge a review, because as far as I'm concerned, he doesn't even know I exist.
Yeah, that's how I am. And when these guys respond to you, you're just kind of like, wow, that's really nice. I know I've been going back and forth with writer Mark Russell. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not. He's going to be writing the Wonder Twins when it comes out this month. And I got a Wonder Twins Twitter account, with all those, Let's Talk Green Lantern, Let's Talk all these other ones, So I started a Let's Talk Wonder Twins a long time ago. And I've always been an advocate for getting a book about the Wonder Twins out. So they're coming out with one with these new comics. I've been going back and forth with Mark Russell, the author. And, he's like, man, I really hope you like it. He goes, you're always talking about it on your Twitter. And it's really cool when these writers reach out to you as much as you give them the accolades that they deserved. They're doing a service to us, and we're getting material that these guys are putting all their time and effort into. Even Liam Sharp talks about how much he puts into these books, and you can tell on each and every page just how much work that man does.
Oh, absolutely. He was commenting the other day on social media about he's not sure how he feels when people compare his art style to somebody else, because he's really not trying to copy somebody else. And, I'm just as guilty of it as anybody else. I've compared his work in the early issues to Jim Steranko, because it reminds me of some of the designs and some of the design ideals that Steranko would do back in the 60s and 70s on the Doctor Strange books, but for example. Sure. And it's not so much I'm trying to say that he's aping his style, but that what he's doing evokes a reminiscence of something that obviously is very good. It's one thing to say, calling the artwork is similar to a 5-year-old on a refrigerator somewhere. That's definitely not complimentary, but I hope he takes it with the complimentary nature in which it's meant. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the book more than I was cautiously optimistic, but I feel like this is really a good series.
Good. It's feeling good. I'm looking forward to the next issues. He said something on Twitter about number 7. Something about number 7 is supposed to be his favorite issue. Whatever that means, I don't know. I guess we'll find out. It's a ways away.
Well, it keeps getting better and better with each issue, so I think he can say that about anything coming up is even better than what he's done. Yeah, but
exactly.
All right, well, let's pause here, and we'll come back in a few moments, and we've got some listener feedback from our last episode to share with everybody.
All right, sounds great, Myron.
Hey guys, come check out Two Dimension Comics, the comic book podcast with no direction.
We feature candid roundtable discussions about all things comics, past and present, with a killer soundtrack.
We like to include visuals of everything we talk about on the show. You can find that by going to bunchofdorks.com and click on the Cyclops!
So, Phil, we have a listener email from Jay. And Jay says, hi, Phil and Myron. Your discussion about Jessica in Justice League Odyssey made me want to put my 2 cents in about her character. I got the Blu-ray for Reign of the Supermen, which includes a sneak peek to the next DCU film, Justice League versus the Fatal Five. The producer stated that Jessica would be the lead character in terms of character focus, and that she and Starboy would connect to help each other through their respective mental disorders, her anxiety and his mania. They said they wanted to destigmatize mental illness as it always gets associated with the villains. This aspect of the film makes me anticipate it more than I had before. If it and Jessica's storyline proves popular with viewers, we may get more Green Lantern representation in the films and in bigger roles. Nathan Fillion was great in Death of Superman and Reign of the Supermen, but don't have a major role to play in events. Him voicing Hal as a lead character would be excellent use of his vocal talent. On the subject of animated films, just as Into the Spider-Verse proved to make Miles Morales a highly engaging character, a major role by Simon Baz may also do the same for him in a DCU film. In an original storyline, the writers would have lots of scope to work with and make him interesting. Shrugging off the depending on the writer's treatment of the character tends to get the results in inconsistent characterization and sometimes sporadic appearances. Oh, and Gravedigger sounds like a suitably 90s grid dark name for Hal to take. Thanks.
We made a lot of good points in that one.
So what do you think about Nathan Fillion as Hal?
Let's unpack that. Oh, I love him as Hal. I mean, it's like every time I watch an animated film, I always expect to hear Nathan Fillion as Hal Jordan. He pegs it every time. And I guess the animators really, really reflect that in the style that they draw him in too.
Yeah, I would agree. I honestly like Josh Keaton a little better, but that's only because I love the Green Lantern animated series so much.
That makes sense.
I think he does a better job of Hal in his prime, so to speak. But I love Nathan Fillion as well. I don't know if I want to see Fillion as a live action version of GL, but I can definitely see him as Hal in the animated versions of the character for these DC animated movies. I'm really hoping that we get to see Sinestro Corps War and/or Blackest Night at some point, and give Nathan Fillion more to do than be the quippy guy. Yeah,
I agree. He needs more talk time. I mean, he's a good actor. I don't think, like you said, I wouldn't want to see him in a live action Hal Jordan, but I mean, he's great for the animated stuff, and I hope they do decide to come out with one of those. Like you said, the Blackest Night or Sinestro Corps War. But it seems like DC is really, really putting out these animated films a lot, I mean, they're dropping a lot of them every year.
Well, yeah, we just got Reign of the Supermen, and Justice League versus the Fatal Five is, I believe, next month.
Yeah.
If I got it right. No, is it Batman Hush? I can't remember. There's like 3 or 4 of them coming out this year.
Yeah, they're really, really releasing those a lot. But, I'll be honest with you, every time, and I don't know if I'm just me, but every time I go to watch them, they're all really, really, really good. I mean, I don't much care for the Batman ones because I'm not a Batman fan, but when I watch the other ones, they're all really good. Justice League War, Atlantis. I mean, they've all been wonderful, wonderful features.
Oh, absolutely. And the really neat thing is if you subscribe to the DC Universe, you're getting to watch them digitally the day they come out in physical form. So when the Reign of Superman came out on Blu-ray and 4K and all that stuff, when they came out on disc, it was available on the DC Universe app that day.
That's really cool. That's really, really neat. What's that subscription service? How much is it a month?
I don't remember how much it is a month. I did it for the year thing back when it was first announced. So I got the first year plus a couple extra months tacked on.
Okay.
And it was like $75 for that.
Yeah. Okay. I've been thinking about it. I'm still not sure.
It sounds like a lot of money when you think about the $75, but when you break it down, that's, $6 a month or so.
Yeah. Not too. I mean, it's not any different than your Netflix and your Hulu's.
Right. And there's original content like Young Justice and Titans, and then there's gonna be Swamp Thing and Stargirl, and I know I'm missing something else along the way. Oh, Doom Patrol. Doom
Patrol. Oh, I'm really looking forward to that one.
So there's going to be a lot of original content, but I think it's interesting that they chose Jessica to work with Starboy, and it makes a lot of sense from that perspective. I don't know how I feel about Simon Baz being kind of the Miles Morales and Into the Spider-Verse. I can see where that could be useful down the road. I guess I'm still looking for, how do I phrase this? I'm looking for Green Lantern adventures in the animated universe that are classic before we get to this kind of stuff. it's just like in the movies. I wouldn't want to see them do a movie where they try to introduce Hal, John, Guy, and Kyle all at once. There needs to be some breathing room. And I don't think we've gotten enough Green Lantern content to jump that far ahead.
Well, and then this goes back to the original film that they came out with Ryan Reynolds. I mean, there was no promo spots that led up to Green Lantern coming out, and not a lot of people were familiar with the characters. And I think I mentioned that before. So you can't go into it automatically being force-fed 4 characters and a ginormous Green Lantern Corps without at least giving it some kind of lead up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you've got to do some universe building first. Yeah.
So, you got to build a template for it. And I don't know about Simon Baz. Why would they? I guess my question is, and this has been, and no disregard to his the listener response, but why would they do that to Simon? I mean, why would they make a feature for Simon Baz? I just don't think that would be relevant. To me, I mean, I'm not saying this to be me, but wouldn't it be a waste of time? I mean, we have all these other Lanterns that have been around well before Simon Baz has, that should and deserve to have that kind of screen time or whatnot than he does. And I troll all over Simon Baz. I need to keep my mouth shut.
Again, send your listener feedback and comments too.
Oh man, I gotta apologize to all the Simon Baz fans. I mean, I hold no contempt towards him. He's just not my character.
Well, I understand it. I wrestle with some of that myself, in that I feel like, and I don't want to get into a whole social commentary thing because I don't know what else can do is get me in trouble. But I feel like people in general have gotten this myopic vision of characters, and that in order to relate to somebody, they either have to look like me or they have to have the same preferences as me, and we can't see beyond that. And I think
kids are like that these days. I've noticed that with a lot of kids, the kids that I teach all the time.
I don't think it's just kids. I mean, I think there are a fair number of adults who, unless we are the same gender or we believe the same things, then you're not like me and I can't see beyond that surface level to find what's relatable underneath.
That's true.
It's sad in a way. And I'm going further down the rabbit hole than I really want to, but, I have never seen anybody who's just like me anywhere. So in order for me to relate to people, I'm not looking for them to look like me or be like me, because people who've had my experiences are very few and far between. I spent the first 40 years of my life not knowing there was anybody out there in the world that had the same birth defect I did.
Right. And everybody's experience is different. And I think as long as everybody accepts that, which I think everybody has a hard time doing that because we're all so judgmental. As long as everybody accepts it, everybody else is different. People should have a problem getting along. I mean, it's just like, it would be like me and you not getting along just because I can't relate to the fact that you went through life with a birth defect. That means nothing to me other than the fact that, that was an unfortunate thing that you had to deal with. I can't relate to it, but I can sympathize and appreciate that you took confidence to tell me that. And, it makes us better friends because I know something about you, and that's more an appreciative aspect of humanity.
Right. And I think anybody can relate to anybody because we all have similar kinds of struggles. They may not be identically the same, but we all have struggles. And, for me, Green Lantern has always been about overcoming adversity, and that adversity can be anything.
Right. And dealing with struggles, everyday struggles, for that matter.
Right, exactly. And so I don't need to have a Green Lantern character who has a birth defect like me to be able to relate to them.
Exactly.
I just don't. But that's I've gone down the rabbit hole further than I want to, so I don't want to go any further with that because I don't want to get in trouble. Because if you get me talking, I'll probably say something that'll get me in trouble, I'm sure.
Well, then we'll say something upbeat. Simon Baz, you rock. We wish you the best in Heroes in Crisis.
But I appreciate Jay sending us some feedback, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in this next movie. I think it's good that we start talking about mental illness because it has been stigmatized, and I think we like to put the blame on things here I go again. We like to put the blame on things that are not really as important as things like mental illness, because there's still this thing where people won't talk about mental illness. Yeah. And so we put things over top of that when we want to blame the actions of people on a thing instead of on something like mental illness. And that's a great crisis I think we have in this country.
And because it's easier to put it on a tangible item than something that you can't see or put a face on. Right.
You're exactly right. Because if we put it on that, we'd have to acknowledge it exists and acknowledge our failings as our failings as a people to address a situation that should be addressed.
Absolutely, that's so accurate.
But anyway, enough with us. We're both going to get in trouble. This is going to be the episode that gets us in some kind of a Twitter fight with somebody on Twitter somewhere. You watch.
Please send listener feedback towards that last conversation we just had.
All right, well, let's pause for a second and we'll come back and we'll wrap things up.
Okay, great.
This is Giancarlo Volpe, producer of Green Lantern, the animated series, and you're listening to the podcast of OA.
Okay, Myron, here we are back, episode 134, going into the books. Green Lantern, issue number 4, another stellar book again.
Yeah, I'm really excited. The last episode we did the 2 retro books, and I think we'll do that again for another episode this month. And, I kind of counter that back and forth. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this book a lot more than I kind of thought I was going to. And I'm happy for that. And I'm really looking forward to see where this is going to go. I know we've got an appearance coming up from Adam Strange, not too much further down the road here. So I'm really kind of looking at each issue as something of an event.
I like Adam Strange. It's going to be cool to see him. And with Sharp's artwork, he's going to draw him really well. I would be curious to see what Sharp would do with like a Guy Gardner or John Stewart, or an Aricia, or for that matter.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that when they've used other lanterns, they haven't used the ones that are really familiar to people.
Yeah, they haven't. They've done the unfamiliar ones.
Well, and ones that you haven't really seen in quite a while, which yeah. I enjoy because it's neat to see characters like that back. I end up going back and having to look them up because I don't always recognize them.
Well, there's 3,600 of them. It's not easy.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I've enjoyed it so far, and I enjoy our conversations. Definitely.
Yeah. I do too, Myron. Looking forward to the retro review. I guess I'll have to come up with some material to see what I'm going to do it on this time.
Yeah, same here. We'll have to between now and then we'll have to text each other with what our choices are.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
All right, well, thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of the podcast of OA. We'll be back again soon, hopefully. And until next time, as I always love to tell you folks, please keep your power ring charged, treat each other well, and make every day your brightest day.
We'll see you guys soon.
The Podcast of OA is the official podcast of the blog of OA and a proud member of the Comics Podcast Network. Share your comments and questions by calling the show's voicemail line at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. You can send your emails to podcast@blogofoa.com. You can also find the Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA on Twitter and Facebook. Green Lantern and other related characters are the copyrighted property of DC Comics Incorporated and are used without permission. The Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA are fan productions and do not claim any ownership over the Green Lantern or any other copyrighted properties.